Hey there, welcome to episode 54 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. By the way, we are a 501c3 public charity, a Nevada nonprofit, your local enablers and encouragers of local innovation. We're recording this later in the evening on Friday, March 1st. Normally we would publish earlier on a Friday. Time does not always work in the ways we expect. So later in the evening, it's coming up on 9 p.m. on Friday, March 1st, 2024, here in Las Vegas. First Friday, by the way, canceled. The Friday itself is fine, but the first Friday event downtown Las Vegas in the Arts District was canceled due to excessive wind warnings. And I don't know that this has happened before. I don't know that the wind actually arrived. The cancellation may have been, out of an abundance of caution. And by the way, if you've ever seen a tent or booth, which they are very prevalent at the First Friday Foundation events, so mobile vendors who use tents or booths or anything that's not like a food truck or a building, if there are heavy winds, it is absolute mayhem. So not a bad thing. And in fact, it got moved to the 8th of March. Not that you will use this audio program in your personal scheduling, but it is interesting to know, I think, it comes up from time to time, an informed public who knows, this event was canceled, first of all. Second of all, why? And third, if the wind does not come, it's still okay. When this happened many years ago, almost exactly the same situation. It ended up to be, a quiet evening, almost no wind at all. So there was hand wringing and upset, hurt feelings, and so on. But at the end of the day, had the wind actually come and they had the event anyway, the cost would have been far more substantial. So some hurt feelings or some eye rolls are fine. They're a waste of energy, but they're fine. So 8th of March. We'll see how that goes. I personally have not been to First Friday in many years, but one of the and by the way, this news actually was published in our local media, which is good. I wish our local media would focus on things like this, actual human interest with practicality, which is one of the things we are focused on for our My Muni and Smart Social projects. I myself first found out that the event was canceled for this evening on Instagram, of all places. So casting a wide net is fine, but how do people find out about things in their city? I'm sure finding information on Instagram or Snapchat, or does anyone use Snapchat anymore? Or TikTok or YouTube via a podcast. Finding out these pieces of information is fine, but an authoritative resource. And by the way, I did not look at. Let me actually check the First Friday Foundation website, FFFLV, if I remember correctly. Yeah, First Friday Foundation, Las Vegas. Unfortunately, not updated. So all of their promotional materials, all of their event related for March 1st. Is still in place on their website. So here is a problem. And by the way, it's a problem on our website as well. I do not personally, I'm in charge of that. I don't update our innovateforvegas.org website with topical news as often as I should. Coincident updates with podcasts and other announcements, and our Smart Social program, for example, as that rolls out, would be a great way to keep people informed about things without relying on them stumbling upon it on social media. So the first step in a smart city is to provide authoritative information to the people who live there or who are visiting. As you may know, we have 40 million people visiting the Greater Vegas area each year, according to the Las Vegas Visitors and Convention Authority, VCA. 40 million-ish visiting, 2.3 million-ish living in Clark County, the Greater Vegas area. So keeping people informed should be a simple matter of updating the website for the event. First Friday Las Vegas, First Friday Foundation, nonprofit. So their website, as I'm reading it at this moment, join us Friday, March 1st, 2024, etc. So that's on them. But one of the main problems is people rely on social media before they go to authoritative sources. So that is something to think about. Anyway, get back to my notes. So the topic of today, the title, as you may have read, for.vegas. So when we first rebooted Innovate for Vegas Foundation, it was Code for Vegas Foundation. It was a reboot of the original Code for Vegas from about 10 years ago, which was formed as part of Code for America. That's a long story. But one of the main goals of Code for Vegas was to be a part of the implementation of an open data platform here in the Vegas area. So City of Las Vegas essentially manages that. We've had a podcast with, now it's down to one person, Anthony Willis. It was also Nicole, was it Malichki? Nicole has moved on to City of North Las Vegas. Anthony is still running the GIS data set management platform oversight, etc. So Code for Vegas has been around since then. When we rebooted it, our goal was to kind of pick up where things were left. So it was less than 10 years ago, but it was after I moved to Vegas. The Code for Vegas organization kind of took a long extended pause. So we were rebooting it, and we encountered the notion that if I'm not a coder, I am not welcome. I've mentioned this several times, and that was, of course, never the intention. We would like to be inclusive and diverse and accessible. So that was our goal. And so somewhere in there, we had pondered changing our name to Innovate for Vegas. This aligns with the city messaging, innovation, cultivating innovation, which, by the way, is a much more substantial task than has been given or allocated resources for, and awareness, and a cohesive plan. But anyway, we decided to change our name change our name to Innovate for Vegas. Fits into the innovation district, the Innovate.Vegas, the hashtag Innovate Vegas, marketing and engagement and presence and so on. So Innovate for Vegas seemed to fit in there. We only had to change one word. And by the way, as I'm speaking at this moment, the IRS database is still not updated. It's been about 2 months and a week since we sent the letter. Our paperwork for the state of Nevada, Secretary of State, already updated back in October 2023. So we figured out, I personally spoke with someone at the IRS. So we've done our part. We'll see what happens. But anyway, so we changed our name to Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We're still a 501c3. Nothing other than the one word has changed. But given the legacy of Code for Vegas, we figured, it might be interesting to have a portal of sorts. So we had Code4.Vegas and we had Create4.Vegas. So that was two sides of the same coin, so to speak, right? So if you are a coder and you want to be a part of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation efforts, then you and your efforts would be featured. So let me back up a little bit. So the Innovate for Vegas Foundation website, innovateforvegas.org, is intended to be our sort of business website. We are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. So it's where you will find things like our Nevada business ID, our filings, and information about the IRS, and who's running this thing, our governance, our policies, links to things, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our business website. We're a nonprofit foundation, so .org, everything's appropriate. But if you're looking for who's working on which projects and who's being the featured volunteer this month or things like this, we figured, okay, so Code4 and Create4 will shine a light on the efforts, the volunteer, the individuals volunteering, the volunteer creative work that they're doing, the outcomes, et cetera, and we can feature things in the form of the tech side and then the more creative and human-oriented side, or maybe pets also. So creating and coding, two great tastes, right? And in my personal view, the Code 4 platform, Code4.Vegas, could have been coded by the coders, and then, coders are not always great at user interface and site design and aesthetics and things. So what if the coders, the Code 4 folks, helped with the Create 4 platform site, and then the creative individuals could take some of the task of making the Code 4 site make it look better, make it look like anything. If I had my way, everything would be just pure text. So a collaborative effort between the people who I'm not a coder to reinforce the notion that it does take more than just code, and people who are just learning I just learned how to code, that's all I need to do, right? There's a lot that goes into tools and process and platform and the moving parts and so on, that you want to make something useful for actual people to use. It has to be aesthetically pleasing, so it's not it doesn't send people running like this is confusing. It has to be visually appealing so that people want to use it to access the utility you're trying to provide, right? If you make, so often you will see reviews of things and they will tackle the aesthetic. It could be an amazing thing, whatever it is. It could be an amazing phone, an amazing hammer, an amazing popcorn popper, whatever it is. But if it's ugly, that seems to matter more in some cases. So there is absolutely a level playing field on which to volunteer and put forth effort, whether it's the technical side or the more aesthetic side. There are probably more than two sides, but that seemed like an interesting way to break it down. So we don't really have anybody participating on either of those. Our roles have been very thin in the last it'll be a year in the summer since we last had people really participating in our monthly hackathons and whatnot. We put those aside since nobody was participating. So the notion now is to deploy products and services that we've been pondering, even if that comes down to one person doing most of the effort. And that person also does our podcasts. So we let the Create 4 and Code 4 domains go because, I don't know if you know this, .vegas domains are $30 promotional to register. Now this depends on your registrar, I think, different deals being made, but it's about $30 and then $70 to renew. So do we want to spend $140 to renew two domains that are not being taken advantage of because we have neither coders nor creators to feature and to highlight and to celebrate and so on? Turns out the word for, F-O-R, not the number, for.Vegas was available. At a promotional first year price of $30. So for.Vegas. Now we can start using some subdomains. So now create.for.Vegas, for example. Now for.Vegas has not been deployed as I'm speaking right now. We just did this. It was about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, I think. So for.Vegas can now be a public-facing, volunteer, participant-oriented starting point, I guess, that can differentiate itself from our business website. And again, I cannot stress this enough. We're an actual business. We're a nonprofit corporation. We have a board of directors. We file a tax return, a 990 for a nonprofit. For a tax-exempt organization. We are on record. We have an EIN with the IRS. So we're completely legitimate. But the for.Vegas domain would be aimed at more of the featuring and celebrating the people who will take advantage of this platform we're establishing here. And I'm sure Formula One is going to be running right by here and at any time in November. Anyway, so sorry for that. I'm going to leave that in just so you can appreciate the life of a podcast content creator. So the for.Vegas domain, all about the volunteers, the people that are making things go, the people that are contributing their time. And we can also feature some of the results there to operate as sort of a sandbox for nonprofit features, right? So advertising free, we'll feature any sponsors and so on, but we are not there on our .vegas components. So we have talks.vegas, we have vlocal.vegas, we have 4.vegas now, and these are not intended to make money themselves. Now, vlocal.vegas may spin off, we'll see, but 4.vegas is all about rolling out projects that people can use as either featuring and celebrating our volunteers, or I'm going to give one example where we could maintain, so talks.vegas, for example, as well, not intended to be a revenue generating site. It's really about community elevation. It's about featuring educational, entertaining, and enlightening presentations by the people of the Greater Vegas area, not there to make money. So that can be under the Innovate for Vegas Foundation umbrella. If anyone wants to sponsor, they can sponsor as a 501c3, tax deductible, etc. Not be a part of a money machine, right? So we're not pursuing that project to turn a profit, obviously. So 4.vegas, we do have challengers.vegas was another one. We own challengers.vegas, not intended for a profit. It will be there to sell to specifically to feature and celebrate those who take the time to tackle challenges. They can be tech or not. The Congressional App Challenge, the NASA Space Apps Challenge, the Congressional Art Competition, there's another one that comes to mind. There have been various other challenges about smart cities and so on. So anyone who, first of all, doesn't know about these ahead of time, so we can use that to advertise the existence and the upcoming events to participate in if you are so inclined, and then to feature the teams that take part, teams of one or more. Usually it's teams of 2, 3, 5, 6, whatever. So feature those teams and the people who you will start to see, if this all goes to plan, you'll start to see that there are a few people that tend to take on these challenges more frequently. And hey, guess what? Those people may need to get hired to do something someday. They may be coders. They also may be creative. They may be artistic. They may be site designers. They may be print media designers. They may be audio or video content creators and editors. And so you never know. So the people that take on challenges, rather than hoping that our local news media will cover in some useful way the efforts and outcomes of these individuals who I will call local innovators, rather than relying completely on those news stories, which eventually fall off the front page and nobody ever talks about them anymore, and Instagram news feeds and TikTok videos, those are visible for a brief time and they go away, or they fall down below the fold. The fold is a throwback term that refers to newspapers. So suffice to say, the people that are doing things are so often not recognized or celebrated for their accomplishments. It's a very niche amount of awareness, and we can get over that. If we're a smart city, we should feature the people of the smart city in smart ways. So if you can imagine the Challengers website featuring people putting time, effort, expertise, energy into these challenges, which are competitive projects. These are separate from our projects, which are ongoing, they're long running, they're really more like little startups. So challenges are more, one shot, like we're having a hackathon on a particular day and the results of the hackathon will be judged and there'll be prizes, or you have a month to do something and you present it by some day. So these are challenges with a specific set of goals, a specific due date, rules about teams and who can participate and how. You must be in high school, etc. Our projects for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation are not constrained in those ways. So they're two separate things. We definitely want to feature, even if we have nothing to do with a particular challenge, we do want to feature the people, because we are really trying to enable and encourage local innovation by local innovators. And so those are the kinds of people who do those things and want to make sure people hear about them. Now, if you can imagine that, now change challengers to volunteers. If you have, and by the way, I've volunteered. Aside from my volunteer, I'm completely uncompensated as part of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, both as governance and as a contributor to projects, 100% gratis. And but I make it up in volume. So no worries. But people who volunteer are also so often not recognized. I don't know if volunteers are doing it for the recognition. They are absolutely not required to post a selfie and a tag that, hey, I am volunteering right now. That's not the goal. However, just like challengers, knowing that there is an event coming up is part of the challenge for the participants. So, I would have signed up for that event had I known. That can happen. Similarly, if there is a volunteer effort underway, I'll give one example. The what's it called? Gobble Gobble Give, I believe it is, from Adon. Every year in the across the street from Atomic, in what do they call it? Do they call it the Turkey Lot? I can't remember. It's right there on Fremont and 10th, in there somewhere. So there's every year he has a food and resources like clothing and so on collection, so that people for Thanksgiving can have warm clothing and food and so on. On a personal note, I always am curious why that's only on Thanksgiving. I mean, there are other days during the year as well. That said, coordinating that effort, I've asked Adon, and he said he uses email and social media. So the tools to coordinate, to first of all alert people that there is this event going on. What do we need? We need people that will provide food. We need somebody to transport the things that we collect. We need people to help with sorting. So there are various volunteer roles and resource requirements that enable a volunteer effort to be effective and successful, right? Nobody wants to spend time volunteering and then have that time wasted. You will often hear from food banks, for example, they would rather have donations of food in cans or in a form that is not perishable easily, right? So receiving leftover food from catered events, for example, and that's a longer story. If we can get into that another time. But the rules and requirements and the liability protections and so on. But from a food bank standpoint, it makes more sense to receive foods that are not perishable or easily damaged and so on. So knowing what an event or a particular volunteer effort requires will prevent people from wasting their time. Like, hey, we collected all of these food items for people and they will spoil in the next 3 hours. That's not as helpful. So a way to advertise to people willing to participate, either with their time or with resources of some sort, or both. Here's what we need. Here's the date or dates. Here's how it works. Here's what we need from you, and so on. And then when those things take place and the effort is given, the resources are collected and dispersed and so on, knowing who did what and saying, hey, these 25 people took part in this. You may see a news report on that. Maybe there's even a Facebook group, but news reports go away. There are more exciting headlines about stadiums and OSHA violations from the Boring Company and crime and politics and so on. So these are the things that are always on the front page. The news feed format in general makes it very easy for important things to fall below and off the radar screen, if I can continue to mix metaphors. So the idea with the Volunteer for Vegas portal or platform, if you will, would be to do something like the Challengers website, enable people to plan, advertise, and then recognize and celebrate volunteer efforts and the volunteers that make them go. So if you were at Tech Alley, probably a year and a half ago now, over a year ago. Was it? Yeah, it was probably about a year ago. One of and it's no longer around, but there was a boot camp. The students that were in the boot camp, three of the students, maybe four, were pitching an idea for a volunteer platform to do something as I've described. They wanted to do a review of volunteers, so you could give volunteers stars for something, which I thought was kind of ludicrous, but I suggested maybe noting the amount of time people spend volunteering. Now, that becomes interesting because people put in serious amounts of time, not for celebration like this. They're not doing it as a competition, I should say. But it would be interesting, I think, to know if people want to opt in. You don't have to. You're not being there's no requirements. But if someone volunteers a lot of time, they often do it for themselves, right? I volunteer a tremendous amount of time. I don't walk around saying, I volunteered 25 hours this month or week or whatever. But it would be interesting to know if people do want, kind of a low key, like, here are the people that are actually volunteering serious time. And you start to see patterns in the number of people who are in the upper time ranges. And you start to see things like, well, those people are actually they're spending time and they're accomplishing things. The things that they're doing are making a difference. At the same time, the people that are just getting started or that contribute a few hours when they can here and there, there's not like a ranking system. So I would even suggest that not sorting by time, but you can start to see like, oh, there are clusters of people, whether they're spending 100 hours or 1 hour, they're doing things and they're accomplishing things. So being able to recognize that and to see over time, rather than in a fleeting news feed, how things are starting to fit together, thanks to the efforts of people who volunteer their time. So volunteer for Vegas. That would be a nonprofit, not advertising, free. Donate, sure. So it'd be kind of sponsor/donor driven, but it would be a nonprofit project from our organization. Talks.Vegas, very similar as a separate entity. Talks.Vegas so the Talks and Challengers.Vegas, they're separate entities to hopefully give the sense that they are long lasting. The 4 platforms can be more of experimental implementations. They don't need to go away, but we're thinking, long road ahead sorts of things. So there's no reason that we couldn't somehow get volunteer.Vegas, although volunteer.for.Vegas works too. So we'll see. Well, these are fluid plans. We'll see how things go in the next year or two. But also, side note, it does reduce our costs to be able to roll out new projects with a actual domain associated with them that makes sense. You can volunteer for Vegas. You can run for Vegas. If we were going to do something like the Baker Vegas platform for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, they have like a marathon. They run from Baker to Vegas. So bakervegas.org, I think it is, does that. So there could be events for Vegas, activities for Vegas, fill in what the activity is or the event. So things that are oriented towards community elevation are part of our purpose. So it makes sense to have, just like innovateforvegas.org, Innovate for Vegas Foundation, these are things for, in square brackets, greater Vegas, essentially Southern Nevada. So code and create will now be subdomains, like I said. So code.for.vegas, create.for.vegas, volunteer, like I said, and some others. We're going to start turning up some of the focus on our open data capture platform, which was an idea we had early on. I mentioned that we're down to one person managing the GIS activities, geographical information systems. And they kind of own the open data sets. There are a couple. There's the GeoCommons, there's the Open Government, then LVMPD has open data published on ArcGIS. These are all published on ArcGIS. We'll have to do a refresher on that at some point. And even RTC SNV publishes a lot of data on ArcGIS as a form of open data. Not as useful, but that's another talk for another day. So we could even make initial open transit projects appear in the .4 domain. I don't know. Bus it for Vegas. Who knows? But so the open data capture, it could be something as simple as collect data for Vegas, or it could be less on the nose. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what comes of this. But the for.Vegas domain purchase at $30 saved a ton of money and will enable us to roll out projects along these lines without having to purchase more domains. So look at that, saving money already. Finally, I mentioned very early on, probably two years ago now. No, it wasn't this soon. It was a year and a half ago. Time flies. I say this frequently. I don't want people to work for free, but I want to work with people who are willing to work for free. So people who volunteer their time to work on open source projects that are aimed ultimately at community elevation and even individual volunteer elevation as well. Doing good things with your time and effort and expertise, helping others to do the same. These are all nice things. Doing it for free is great. Volunteering your time, we just finished talking about volunteering your time for things, is generally good. It's good for many reasons. Many of those reasons are your own. The reason I volunteer my time is these reasons are mine. Some of us have reasons in common, but it mostly comes down to, why do you want to do things? That's for you. However, it's always nice to get some money in your pocket eventually. So even if you do volunteer your time, you work on open source projects, you enable some of our projects to roll out. Maybe you bring a new project, maybe you spend some time, maybe you spend too much time like I do. Eventually, we want to release things in such a way as people can either, the example I use is, hey, who's the team that work on that Volunteer for Vegas project? I want to hire them to work on something for me. So the 1 to 10 people or whatever number of people who actually contribute time and energy and creative work to the volunteer platform, for example, might have job offers to work on a consulting or as an employee or who knows what. Or, hey, we want to give money to support this effort, some sort of a tip jar or even recurring sponsored projects, things like this. These are all possible as a nonprofit. There can be, as a nonprofit, be tricky. They can sponsor our organization, but as we roll these projects out to public use and we introduce the value for value model, there may not be a subscription notion. You wouldn't ask people to pay for Volunteer for Vegas on an ongoing basis, but you may have sponsors that want to continue to support that particular project. But the individual volunteers who work on that project, that becomes difficult to pay. It's not impossible, but it would become difficult. However, if we can roll out projects in a for-profit entity, so powered by Innovate for Vegas volunteers, here's a project that you can actually subscribe to. Here's a path to tip jar or providing some financial thank yous to the actual people who developed a project or who continue to work on it and support it. These are the sorts of things that our labs deployments would pursue. So now the lab notion is not new. It's been around forever. Anybody who has a Gmail account now, about 20 years? It was in 2001. No, it was around 2001 or 2002. So 22 years-ish, 20 plus years ago, Google Mail, Gmail launched in beta, and it was in beta forever. So if we have our Latin, so the Google Labs, that was a thing for a while. The Innovate for Vegas Labs could be turning out real, actual products for people to try, and then if they want to be supportive, so we wouldn't we would be powering these things, but they would be completely separate entities. So the Google Mail example is a little bit tricky because they would have to spin out something to a separate entity. So all that said, our labs notion is, as we roll out things, Smart Social and MyMuni, for example, are the first ones that come to mind. We can enable those components, the elements of those projects, to be composed into a functional sharing platform for cities, smart cities even, smarter, even better, smarter smart cities to share information such as today or tomorrow, the First Friday event on First Friday will be canceled, rescheduled due to weather warnings from the U.S. Weather Service. A common place to find open source information. That is, it wouldn't be you must sign up or pay, or these are public service type things. Pieces of information, awareness about how to find things, where to go, when to go. So we can provide ways to access. And by the way, it would point to go to the First Friday Foundation website for the latest information, updates, etc. So it's not about taking over or breaking news first or things. It's really about utility. that is a sort of a platform that would be great for advertising, value for value, financial support from people in the community who find actual value in the efforts. So it would be powered by volunteers from Innovate for Vegas Foundation, but it would be a completely separate for-profit endeavor. So the labs projects would always be, supported by and continuous development, continuing innovation by our civic volunteer core, our cohorts, but there would be opportunities to work on the actual projects, possibly employees, certainly as external 1099 contractors, receiving donations directly. There's a lot of different ways to pursue that. End of the day, this is a completely normal business model. You see it all the time with open source software projects where there are opportunities to pay the people that work on them. So that's how that works. So the 4.Vegas notion is kind of version 2 of the imagined path to having people who volunteer their time and effort and expertise and can actually stick with it to have them get something for their time other than whatever they have that drives them for themselves. That is the story about 4.Vegas. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit more participation in the coming year. I think we've decided, our board has decided, and I've talked to a few other people about this, about waning civic volunteerism across the country. It didn't help the way Code for America ended or sunset the brigade program. There are, though, people who want to volunteer their time. So the question is, can we value that time, not only with projects and efforts that are worth their time, but outcomes that will be usable and useful so that people recognize the value of that time contributed. Not everything is a one and done. I'm not trying to diminish it, but the gathering of food and clothing and so on for a holiday, you volunteer your time and efforts, you donate food and clothing. The day comes, it's distributed to people who need these things, and then people get back to the rest of what they're doing. So if you deploy a platform that enables volunteers to collaborate with organizers and to be recognized for their time and efforts and so on, that's an ongoing effort. It's not one shot and you're done. It's, the Volunteer for Vegas platform needs updating and new features and so on. So it's different when you consider volunteering on an ongoing basis, and then how can we turn that into some sort of sustainable recognition, financially or otherwise. By the way, all of our projects are also worthy of inclusion in one's portfolio. So work on a project, stick it on your resume, make sure you point people at it. Like, here's an example of what I've worked on, full attribution as always. And that is one of the goals of the Code for, Create for. Even volunteer for. Volunteers, are you volunteer? Technically it's a little bit different, but the notion of volunteering your time without anyone knowing about it, you are allowed to do that, but it happens whether we like it or not, more often than not. Sometimes it would be nice if people knew that you are actually trying to do good things with your time, and maybe quietly having people be aware of that would be okay sometimes. So we'll see where we can go with this, but that's the 4.Vegas notion. All the other things I've talked about today, especially Talks.Vegas, that stalled out over the summer because of some miscommunications about sponsor participation, unsustainable configuration of how that was unfolding. So we're going to try it again this year with some possible venue collaborations and so on. So these are all geared at recognizing and celebrating what people know, what people are doing, awareness and communication and discovery. These are all things that we can do better here. That's what we're doing. So that is that. I didn't touch on the links. I, as usual, have links to our website and to our GitHub org. If you are a GitHub person or if you want to work on our projects, we have some of them detailed there. Attending our board meeting, our board meeting we have monthly. Our office hours are weekly on Thursdays. As I'm speaking now, they're Thursdays at 6 p.m. They used to be at 5 p.m. So every Thursday, 6 p.m., a virtual office hours session scheduled for an hour. Our yesterday, Thursday, the 29th of February, we went for about 2.5 hours. We do have our board meeting during our office hours on the fourth Thursday of the month. So that was yesterday. So our board meeting itself took about 20 minutes, but the conversation continued. So our board meetings, unless we have private business, are open to for anyone who wants to participate. So you jump on. The link for our virtual meeting is provided in our calendar, our gatherings calendar, which is on our website. So if you visit innovateforvegas.org, right now it's on the homepage. Ideally, we will have more things to talk about on our home website. It will be kept current, and things like a gatherings calendar will be obvious and easy to find. It may not be on the homepage, but you'll be able to find it from there. So visit innovateforvegas.org, and if you're interested in participating in our office hours meetings, office hours where you can ask questions about any of the audio programming I have done. You can ask about our projects. You can ask about our organization, our governance. If you're interested in joining our board of directors or any other thing, our office hours are mostly about civic volunteering in general, but specifically our efforts, and then, of course, whatever you'd like to bring. So there you go. I'll leave it there. Thank you, as always, for listening. Tell your friends. Innovate for Vegas.